Good evening, colleagues. We have called this press conference to clarify a few matters that are important to clarify in order to eliminate any confusion or misunderstanding with regard to the concerns that our members have, as well as our stakeholders and the concerned groupings in society have raised with us as the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And this matter will focus purely on the issues that have been raised as they relate to KPMG. And in this regard, I would like to start off by saying that SAICA has received widespread requests from a variety of stakeholders, including its members. And these requests were quite emphatic and very significant in terms of what the people that have spoken to us and written to us expect us to say and do. And we regard these as significant players in business, as well as civil society, as well as the general public, for us to be able to take a strong stand against unethical behavior by the members of SAICA. So that's what these stakeholders have basically emphasized and called upon us to consider. And then, given the significant calls that I've made reference to, the Institute has taken a decision to unequivocally support any initiative that will support SAICA to respond to these strong calls by society. As SAICA, we take our reputation very strongly and very seriously. And the reputation of the Chartered Accountancy profession and the CAs in particular and their designation in South Africa has received, no doubt over the past few weeks, a significant reputational setback, which has resulted from the developments surrounding the involvement of, as I said, CAs that are employed by KPMG. And as I've indicated, this message will be directed at the matters that are affecting KPMG. As the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, we want to register our unconditional support for any independent inquiry into the conduct of these members of SAICA that carry the CASA designation that are employed by the auditing firm KPMG. And in this regard, we want to emphasize that, and perhaps this is where the confusion and the misunderstanding is, we want to emphasize that this inquiry will not be conducted by SAICA, even though SAICA has got a responsibility to take its members into a disciplinary process. But this one, given its complexity and the outcry and the calls that have been made out there and the expectations, will not be conducted by SAICA, but by an independent, either retired judge or senior counsel. And furthermore, the inquiry will not in any way contradict, interfere, obstruct, undermine, water down, or even downplay the investigation being carried out by the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors. And the reason I'm saying this is because, there has been media announcements yesterday that this may, in fact, be obstructive, or SAICA does not have a legal mandate to actually carry out investigations. I want to emphasize this is not about SAICA carrying out investigations, but it's about SAICA supporting an independent inquiry that will help SAICA to be able to execute its mandate of speeding up the disciplinary action towards its members that need to be responding to the breach of the code of conduct. And therefore, in the light of this reality that I have just outlined, where the actions of a small minority of individual chartered accountants can seriously, affect the reputation of all the chartered accountants as professionals in our situation and in our environment, SAICA has decided to support unequivocally this independent inquiry into the actions, and I must emphasize, and the intentions of the individuals that are involved. We've been engaging extremely and have understood the loud calls of our members and stakeholders and many other groupings in society on this matter, and equally welcome the position of KPMG leadership, both locally here in South Africa and globally, in embracing this call and subjecting themselves to a scrutiny or an inquiry of this nature. And I want to also stress the fact that the concerned groupings were in fact and are emphatic as we speak to them, and as they write to us, about the importance of this inquiry, extending to all chartered accountants that are involved in both audit as well as non-audit work. And I think that's an important point to make, that it's meant to actually cover all chartered accountants that were involved in audit and non-audit work that the reports of the past week have made reference to. And I want to add that the requirements for such an extraordinary measure has been called for by many of our members, as well as by the stakeholders. And all of them have supported the need for trust to be restored in the profession. And this is important given the fact that any unethical action of a few members that brings into question the ethical reputation, not only of our profession, but of the entire business community in South Africa, is something that needs to be acted upon, and acted upon swiftly. And we've heard and listened and understood that expectation. And I want to also underscore the fact that the independent inquiry in no way affects or replaces other investigations or inquiries by other organizations, including the RBA or government or any other structure that feels that they have had a relationship with KPMG or an association with KPMG or authority over KPMG and want to and feel that it's necessary for them to conduct their own investigations. And I also want to emphasize that the ethical values of the chartered accountants and professionals within our institute are sacrosanct. Hence the need for SAICA to address the unethical behavior of some of its individual members by way of support, as well as to make sure that we speed up the extraordinary measures to protect the reputation of the entire profession. These steps for us are important because they will aid us to speed up the normal processes that we carry out as SAICA as part of our disciplinary procedures, which, as it's always the case, will also rely on the outcomes of other investigative bodies, including the Independent Regulatory Board of Auditors. and many others that we tend to rely upon, like other prosecutorial organs of state. So we will use the findings of the independent inquiry that could be convened to complement the findings of any regulatory and these public prosecutorial investigations when we conduct our own SAICA specific disciplinary steps against members who have been brought to us, to our attention by various parties, including the KPMG report. And additionally, who would have brought the profession into disrepute. Let me end off by saying of critical importance is the restoration of trust in the chartered accountancy profession. And also important here is the dependence of all sectors of South African society, including business, on this trust. And as SAICA, we are convinced that this completely justifies our decision to support the independent inquiry. And having said before that this independent inquiry will not necessarily be conducted by SAICA, I want to repeat that, but it should be conducted and chaired by an eminent person that can make sure that the truth and all the truth will actually come out and satisfy all the calls that we've been getting from the members, as well as business, as well as the prominent concerned groupings that have sent us messages to act upon these matters. And those are the messages that we just wanted to say and clarify in terms of the role of SAICA in dealing with this issue that everyone expects of us, to be decisive, to be proactive, and to be speedy in responding to this issue. Because as we speak, business is at pains to make definitive calls in terms of what to do with the association and relationship with KPMG. And I think it's important that as the Institute, in working in collaboration with the stakeholders, these matters are speeded up. And I want to say that I'm glad that even KPMG is comfortable and supportive of being subjected to this particular review and an independent inquiry, because it will go a long, long way in putting the profession back on the line of trust, integrity, and being a truly trusted carrier of the symbol of trust and integrity in our society. I want to thank you for coming and listening. I can take any questions of clarity, but I also want to emphasize that this is the only statement we'll be issuing for now, because it has been difficult to locate where SAICA should be in this respect, and various interpretations that were there in terms of what is SAICA's role in this respect. But our role and our conviction is simple, that we cannot ignore the emphatic calls of people that are saying, and business in particular, we need something decisive to be done so that we can continue to make business decisions and calls about our association with KPMG. That's the issue that's basically driving us to be unambiguous about supporting a call of this nature. Thank you very much.
Graham Hoskin from Times Live. In terms of this inquiry, are you able to say when it will be set up, who is likely to chair it, has SAICA approached any specific person to chair it? And also those who've been mentioned in the so-called KPMG road report, which is KPMG has now distanced itself from. Will they be allowed to air their voices and to put their side across as victims of this, what is obviously clearly a severe mistake, as KPMG puts it, or smear campaign as those who were targeted in the KPMG road report. Thank you.
Yeah. No, we don't know as yet the identity of who will carry it out. I've got no doubt, though, that during the course of next week, we will know, because this matter is of grave urgency. So possibly the senior counsel or the retired judge will be calling you again to basically take you through the outline of the terms of reference. For me, it was important as a SAICA representative to just register the fact that we've received numerous calls and we've had those calls, and we want to say that we're supportive of something of this nature. In terms of the participation rights of the people that may or may not participate, we'll leave that to the head or the panel of this particular inquiry to make that decision, because they know best how to conduct and navigate through something of this complexity. I think there's a follow-up also.
In terms of, so my understanding is that SAICA is now pushing for this independent inquiry, and SAICA is going to be, although SAICA is not going to be conducting the independent inquiry, SAICA is pushing for this independent inquiry to be established. Is that correct?
We're actually not pushing for it. We're just supporting it to say it must happen because it's needed. So I think the use of language is important here. It's not something that we'll ever oppose. It's something that we strongly support. In terms of how it gets convened, it's important for us that it gets convened urgently. That's why we're making the statement that is something that, we've received calls from various significant, civil society organizations that have made a direct instruction that SAICA must convene something like this. You have seen the media statement of the Reserve Bank, which I think came out yesterday. It was very explicit about that. You've seen the statement by Business Leadership SA. It was very emphatic about this matter. And the statement also by the South African Council of Churches was very explicit about this matter. And it's something that we believe that it ought to be supported and formed in a manner that will get to the bottom of the issues of concern. Yes, please.
Samuel Amasero from ENCA. My question would be, what issues of concern will you be raising to this independent investigation, and what alarm bells have you taken from those who are implicated in this misconduct from the KPMG employees who are your members here at SAICA? What will you be taking to this independent inquiry? And I find it very concerning that you do not know the role that SAICA should be playing in this kind of, I'd say, saga that is currently unfolding. Shouldn't you have outlined if or foreseen such circumstances when this association was formed, and how to oversee how your own members conduct themselves in the corporate environment?
Yeah. Let me start off by saying that we understand where we're located in terms of this situation. Our role is to take the outcome of the inquiry and use it for our own SAICA defined processes to deal with members that have breached the code. So we're not in doubt about that. We're not uncertain about that. We know exactly. What we don't know, which is very important, is what are the things that these members have actually done or not done. That's why the inquiry is so important for us, so that we can know not only the omissions, but the intent behind those omissions. I think this is very, very important. And most of those that are calling for this inquiry, they're actually asking for that depth in terms of scrutiny of the situation. And in terms of supporting our members to always be on the right side of their conduct, I can only say that more than 99% of our members are actually doing the right thing. And it's important for us that we support those members and make that message very explicit, that these matters that we're dealing with here are merely exceptions, which cannot be taken lightly, though, because their impact has been very, very significant to society, hence the concern of these civil society groupings and concerned South Africans.
So isn't it a bit disingenuous that SAICA is waiting for this inquiry to be held when SAICA can start instituting disciplinary steps against members who've been identified by KPMG in their own documents and their own admissions? You know, you've had the top 5 executives, or top 7 executives within KPMG resign. You've had your own fund of vaults who've signed off on these reports. Surely SAICA should start its own processes and almost run a parallel process. I mean, because at the moment we don't know when this inquiry is going to take place. We don't know if the judge is going to be appointed or senior counsel is going to be appointed, who, when, how, and what their terms of references are going to be. And given how, as you've rightly pointed out, how pressing this issue is, surely a disciplinary process or a review by SAICA should be conducted currently before the judicial, for want of a better word, judicial commission inquiry starts.
Yeah, no, that's true, and it's a fair point. I mean, remember, KPMG have done their own preliminary review that revealed and exposed what had happened that led to the action that they've taken. We have spoken to KPMG about the need to come to SAICA once they've finished their follow-up investigation and disciplinary process, because that is still happening within KPMG. And it is normal procedure within SAICA that we wait for the other processes to take place. And why we feel that this inquiry is important is the speed with which it is expected to run and finish. And the speed with which it's actually not even run and finish, but it's going to start. So I don't think there can be an expectation of any delay. It can't, because the voice of these concerned people are very loud, as I've indicated. And as I said, business is actually waiting in the fringes to know what is going on, what is going to happen to get to the bottom of these issues. So we can't take these issues at face value or superficially, given their complexity. We do need to depend and rely on something that has been thoroughly scrutinized. Then our own processes can also be equally effective to actually impose the right sanctions and penalties as the case may be.
Would your own processes, would they look at bringing the enlarged things, your unfunded vaults, sorry, I'm just getting to other names, the Salim Essers, the Mark Romanskys, would your processes look at bringing those people before your own process and having them answer to the allegations that they've faced, even if they're not brought before, say, the inquiry? If evidence comes out in the inquiry that SAICA members such as these have committed offences under SAICA's Code of Ethics, would your processes look at disciplining these people?
Yes. Now, our process, as I've explained in the other media conference, will certainly be looking at all the SAICA members that you have mentioned, and that process has already started. And we're already cooperating with the SIU that is looking into some of those issues where those matters are already before the SIU. So, and it is normal practice, once again, that once that process is finished, then we'll be able to then finalize our own process as SAICA. But should that process take much longer than is reasonable, we'll have to, and we're already engaging on mechanisms of speeding up the preliminary assessment of what could be the right engagement with these members and the right sanction to deal with them. So those are the issues that we're currently pursuing, given the public outcry and public concern out there.
And so just another follow-up question to that. Within your own process, would you look at calling in those, say, who were mentioned in the so-called road report, like the Johan van Lockenbergs, the Lisa Pickies, the Praveen Gordans, those who lost their job because because of the so-called rogue report by KPMG and its dodgy findings?
Yeah, I think let's leave that to the people that will be conducting the inquiry, and I would like to believe that sometime next week there will be an opportunity to have another session like this, where you'll be taken through the nuts and bolts of the terms of reference and be able to be exposed to the identity of who would be possibly running with this matter. So I think ours today was to just outline where SAICA is located into this and what informs that kind of firm position that SAICA will take to make sure that we respond to public concern and the public interest out there. Yeah, I think we're done. This was not meant to be a long session. This was basically meant to clarify the misunderstanding that is out there. And I think the details about the functioning of the investigations going forward and the cooperation that SAICA will be having with them will be subject of another discussion once we know how the inquiry is likely to proceed. And bear in mind, I mean, this is for us about cooperating with every other organ that is doing an investigation. It's not only about this independent inquiry. Whether it's RBA, whether it's government, whether it's parliament, whether it's, for instance, the Minister of Finance has just announced today some work that they will also be doing on the work that KPMG has been doing with government. So we'll be looking at all those investigative processes to inform our own response and conversation and disciplinary processes with our members. Yeah. But thanks very much for responding so swiftly. I know we've been stringing you along the whole day today, and we really appreciate you and your understanding and coming here today. Thanks very much.